Hello and welcome to another interesting to be powerful conversation to inspire. I'm Leo and today I'm joined by Yannick Picard, a mindset, confidence and high performance coach helping GBTQ plus. Then uncover self-sabotage and turn it into self-mastery so they can stop feeling guilty and live a happy and fulfilling life. Transforming their limiting beliefs and creating a vision for what they would love to have. Yannick helped them make their dreams a reality by sharing his unique tools and strategies. So, Yannick, thank you for joining me. I'm really interested to know more about the niche of GBTQ plus community that you coach.
Well, thank you, Leo, for inviting me to take part in this podcast. So I'm really honored, and I feel privileged for the invitation. And so what led me to focus or to niche on GBTQ plus community is I'm part of that community, and I actually it became apparent through my own personal experience and friends that as well that there are always a similar set of circumstances that we were struggling with. And so I decided to use what my own personal experience and anecdotal conversations that I'd had with friends and with acquaintances, and just decide to really kind of like hone in on what are some of the biggest challenges that that members of our community face. And so after being a little bit reluctant at first because I didn't want to be pigeonholed, I guess, as a gay men's coach, I stopped resisting and I decided to jump all in and focus on helping that group of people. Just basically sort of like uncover what is often standing in their way of having a happy, fulfilling life that that is free of guilt and shame, really.
Yeah, I get what you mean about like pigeonholing yourself and like I'm in that community, like as it well. So I get that, but I think like coaching for GBTQ plus man is so important and so needed, and I don't actually know many people that kind of do that kind of work.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, like I look back, Leo, and I was bullied in 5th and 6th grade, and as a result of that, there's a part of me that that I felt ashamed of. And I mean, like at the time when I was like 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, I don't necessarily think that I knew what shame was, really, but it's something that I experienced. And as a result of that, like in my head, something got wired. And so me showing up vulnerably, me showing up authentically was dangerous. And so and at that age, to be honest with you, like my parents had recently split up. I really didn't know who I could turn to, who I could speak with. And the other thing also culminating around that time was that I I basically realized that that unlike other boys, basically, I had this attraction to other boys, and so like in my head, like all of this playing together was like, okay, wait a sec, like if I say something, or like if this becomes known, I mean, my life is a little bit hellish right now. I don't know who I can speak with, and so I kept very, very private because I didn't want life to get any worse than it was for me. So basically, like what I'm effectively trying to do is find other people who've had not necessarily like an exact experience that I have, but have had similar experiences where something's come up and it's altered their way of being, of how they showed up, and help them see that it's actually safe now to show up authentically, and they don't have to be as fearful of doing that.
Yeah, and as it was, but no, the GBTQ plus community do face more issues, what can take more issues around competence and that kind of thing. So I think coaching can be really, really beneficial. I mean, beneficial whoever you are, that you may definitely GBTQ plus people will definitely find it really helpful, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what we don't necessarily realize at the time was that how much that can have an effect on confidence of members of the community. Like we take a look as adults, and with time, like as we basically get older, we basically build discernment, which is something that we don't necessarily have as kids. So, and oftentimes what we'll do is that we won't necessarily relate one to the other, but I found that in like most circumstances that that's one of the first things that affects members of the GBTQ plus community at a very young age. And because the resources aren't necessary, like I'll speak for my own experience, like the resources weren't there at the time, and I didn't know who to turn to. And so I was basically left to my own devices. And so over time, I basically had it's almost like the mind chatter, right? And the result of the mind chatter was really like extremely negative for me, because it's like, oh, like never good enough, or like you screwed up again, or whatnot. And it's the chatter. It's not like a TV that, like, when you're done watching a TV, you can mute or you can just turn off. Like you're like, whether you want to or not, you're stuck with your mind. Like you're in a sense, like it's almost like you're trapped in a prison. And so what I really like doing is helping others basically take a look and notice what's there, and what are some of the stories that are basically keeping them in that prison, if I can use sort of like air quotes, and by helping them question all of that, it often basically creates a space for them to realize that, wait a sec, if I thought a certain way and it created this, could I think differently and get myself out of this, or start to pull myself away from this? And oftentimes that's really just what we need, really, is just sort of like having a small opening that gives us the space to question what's there, as opposed to always being in automated responses, which is what pretty much we do for I want to say 90% plus of our days. Everything is just sort of like automated. We don't necessarily think. I mean, when I get behind my car, do I think of, oh, like every step that I take to start the car, put my seatbelt on to start driving? No. I mean, I probably did when I started driving. I mean, I hope I did, but today it's it's just something that's completely automated. And so by allowing the space to question, then you create some space to wonder. It's like, hey, it's like, am I doing this the best way? Is there a better way for me to be doing this, or looking at this situation from a different perspective? And oftentimes there is. It's just that we haven't given ourselves that space to get curious and to question.
Yeah, having that page is really helpful, and having that guidance. So I'm gonna ask you the second question now. So what inspires you?
Yeah. So honestly, like Leo, like what inspires me is people who show up authentically and share themselves vulnerably. I like that's a gift, and it's something that I would want everyone to be able to experience, like to just be able to be like, without spending so much time in their head thinking of, am I doing this right? What will others think of me, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. That freedom to be ourselves is that we all kind of felt like if we had that freedom, I think we could all kind of live in a lot more harmony. Couldn't we?
100% agree with you. We would be a lot more harmonious.
So, what my second question? What difference would you like to see or make in the world?
So dovetailing into like sharing vulnerably and like, I would love to help as many members of the GBT community shed the guilt, shame, so that they can allow themselves to experience like bliss, like happiness. I know that, and I'll speak for myself as well, I know that so many of us will sabotage our efforts because there are deep-rooted beliefs that maybe we're not good enough. And sometimes like we might think that we're not worthy of love, or we're not worthy of being happy, or having a successful career, or having a successful relationship. And so I would really, I'd love to start a movement which would inspire GBTQ plus community, like basically like people of all ages, to live a life they're proud of and that they're successful at, without their nagging doubt, like having that mind chatter always turned on and always doubting, and keeping them stuck, and allowing them to accept, hey, you know what is. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that like it has to be forever. I can basically choose to create something different, something that I'm happy about, and something that's fulfilling. Like basically to light a spark, to give a desire for others to want better and to expect better, and if anything, to inspire them to believe that they can have that life and it is within their grasp, if they're willing to tolerate a little bit, like being a little bit uncomfortable on that journey to just having and experiencing life to the fullest.
Yeah, I know you do a lot of the work with self-sabotage. Because we all have the tendency to sabotage ourselves in different ways, don't we? And I know you do a lot of work around that. So,
Yeah. And the self-sabotage, like oftentimes, like people don't necessarily equate certain behaviors as self-sabotage. Like, for example, some people might not necessarily think that procrastination or avoidance is really self-sabotage until they pause, and when they are avoiding something, a conversation, a situation, they realize that, wait a sec, like I'm not having this conversation, I'm not taking this action because like my mind is making me believe that this terrible thing might happen and that it is in my best interest to effectively almost like be like an ostrich and put my head in the sand and pretend that either it's not there or not take action, not have the conversation, that it'll go away and it will magically sort itself out. But what I found, personally speaking, because avoider was my number one way of self-sabotage, was that in the end, what happened was basically like a lost friendship or similar circumstances. And what what the avoidance, the voice that told me to avoid, was telling me, it's like, oh, by avoiding, it's going to work out. But in the end, what I truly found was that by avoiding, I was basically going to get the outcome that the avoider was telling me would not happen. And so I just basically over time learn to, I guess I'll use the expression to get smart about it and realize, like, wait a sec, like this is my avoiding speaking right now. And it's telling me that by avoiding, I'm avoiding like this conclusion that it's arrived at. But I know now that by avoiding it, the conclusion that it's saying that I'm going to avoid is actually the conclusion that most likely will occur by avoiding. And so I just basically turn the situation around and I'm like, okay, so if I wasn't avoiding and if I showed up authentically and vulnerably, how can I turn this around and make it in a situation where I actually get that outcome, but without avoiding? So whether it's avoidance, perfectionism, or like one of the many ways that we self-sabotage, I just basically slowly over time built the capacity to look at the situation and look at what the saboteur was telling me was going to happen, and decide to turn this around so that I got the better outcome simply by not following what the saboteur was telling me to do.
yeah, I think it's really helpful to be aware of your kind of top part sabotage, and then once you have that awareness that maybe you're a procrastinator or you avoid certain situations, once you're more aware of that, it's then easier to kind of do something about it.
Yeah, and these are all, like Leo, these are all adaptive behaviors. Like when we were kids, like we love trying things to get yes, to get our way. And so when and this is like, I'll give you a typical example. You go ask like one person, and like, for example, like a parent, you'll go ask like mom, and mom will say no. And then 2 minutes later, you'll go and ask dad, and dad will say yes. So you know that, oh, wait a sec, when mom says no, dad can say yes. or when dad says no, then you go to mom and mom says yes. So you learn that as a you learn that as a strategy. And so, but what happens is that, like, as you get older, some of these strategies that worked when you were growing up don't work anymore. And they basically are what is keeping you stuck. So there's nothing wrong with having all of that. We all have them to a certain degree. It's just recognizing what they are and what is most likely occurring that is stopping you really from being self-expressed, or just having that freedom of being.
Yeah, that's very true. All sabotage come from our learning that when we're younger, and then we sort of go along into adulthood, not really being so aware of them until we find that they're really affecting our kind of everyday, living. And then we need to look at them, be like, hey, I'm not private anymore. I don't need to have that behavior, have that kind of safety mechanism. I don't need it anymore.
Right, that's exactly correct. And then just realize that, okay, if I don't need that anymore, then what's a better behavior that I can have that will basically allow me to continue to grow as a person? And don't get me wrong, Leo, it is like I got uncomfortable when I started doing this. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, it's like, hey, it's like a walk in the park, and like you get like the cotton candy and you get the lollipop. It's like, no, it's not necessarily that. So there will be times where you're going to feel uncomfortable. And the only reason it's uncomfortable is effectively you're taking an action that goes against what your head is telling you you should be doing. And oftentimes it's an action that you might not have ever taken before. So you're feeling like maybe like a little bit wobbly, just like a kid who's learning to walk. And it's like at first it's like they're holding onto the wall, or they're holding onto objects because they're not steady on their feet. Well, it's the same thing. So just consider that if it's uncomfortable and you're not sure, that just go back to, hey, you know what? Like, there is a time as a kid when you started to walk that you felt exactly the same way, except that like now as an adult, like you actually have like a lot more experience, like you've got a fully developed brain. Like as a kid, like it was just like, oh, you didn't, like when you fell on the ground, you didn't tell yourself, it's like, oh my God, like I'm such a bad walker. No, you just got back up and then you tried walking again. And then you just tried walking, and then eventually you're able to basically not hold on to walls or objects, and you're fully able to walk. Same way when you learn to ride a bicycle. So at first you had like maybe it was a tricycle, and then after that you got like training wheels, and then you took off one of the training wheels. So it was just like, hey, if you felt like you're wobbly, you could always rely on the one side that had the training wheel. So just basically what I'm saying is that if you can bring that same type of eagerness and openness to the process as you did when you were learning to walk, or when you're learning like to swim or to bike or whatnot, it will help you get to make that change in a way that is extremely supportive for you. And that, you know what, if it doesn't turn out exactly the way that you want the first time, just consider, it's like, well, the first time that I stood up and I wanted to walk, I didn't walk 5 kilometers. I probably fell after 1 step or maybe 2 steps, but at least that was the baby step that you needed to take on the journey for you to be able to walk and maybe to run, and for some people out there to go on a marathon or a triathlon.
Yeah, all about kind of being brave enough to take that first step again.
That is so well said, Leo. Exactly. Being brave and taking that first step. Excellent summary.
Well, that is a really interesting conversation, and I wish we had longer, but as you know, trying to keep the little interviews. So thank you so much to my guest today, Yannick Picard. Where and how can people connect with you?
Well, thank you, Leo. And I wish we had more time, but I get it. We're trying to keep things into a set amount of time. So the easiest, if people want to connect with me, is either through my Instagram, and my Instagram is The Naked Coach, all one word, so no dashes or hyphens or anything like that, or to find me on LinkedIn at my name, Yannick Picard. So if you go to linkedin.com/IN/Yannick Picard, all one word, that is the best and easiest way, I think, for people to get in touch with me.
Great, and I share your social media link with this interview that people can easily find you, I hope. So thank you, Yannick, and thank to everybody who watched this and H's interview. We'll be back soon with another powerful conversation. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.